sometimes progress is measured in the degree of pleasure. And so as much as we will experience pleasure in meditation, with pleasure comes pain. It's an equal exchange. So with meditation, when we're uncovering, the depth of, say, some blocked emotions, or we're revealing something in our experience where we have to take a certain level of responsibility for how we're engaging something, or, a relationship, etc., we experience the pain of that unconsciousness. And by way of experiencing that pain, we then emerge into the pleasure, of that experience. In Buddhism, for instance, the initial path of Buddhism is called, well, the higher path is Mahayana, but the lower path of Buddhism is focused on what most people typically think of Buddhism, like a monk who, is renunciate and not having sex and fasting, and, seems like a very disciplined and hard life. But that's the initial path of Buddhism, like the entry level, because without understanding and having a new relationship to pain, then we cannot experience pleasure. And in a culture where pleasure is the kind of fiend addiction, we oftentimes have become weak in regards to how we relate to pain. What is our relationship with pain? And not that we're going to be kind of running after pain, like seeking pain. We're just embracing it as it arises. So in the meditative space, as you intensify meditation, just like, for those that some of you have guided through detox stuff, or, some of the in the other groups, in the detox process, when we're doing fasting or cleansing the body through, fruits and juicing and stuff, it usually is quite painful. We actually end up looking like we get sick or we're purging, but that's how the body is releasing. That's how we're actually healing. That's how progress is actually measured. So it's not necessarily that your progress is measured by how, painful your meditations are. It's just simply recognizing that on the path of exploring yourself and deepening into meditation, there will be times where it is difficult. You feel like emotions are arising more intensely. You're maybe more sensitive to the world, more empathetic. You're revealing more things about your experience that are misaligned. This is the pain, but that pain is being exchanged for the pleasure of the peacefulness, of the joyfulness, of a more consistent stability and foundation, within our everyday moments. So just kind of a segue, because anytime we're, consistent with our practice, we're generally going to reveal both. And that's often why many who are on this path go through a lot of roller coasters. And we can mitigate those roller coasters at times, but sometimes that's a part of it, right? And that's maybe what we've been avoiding our whole life, not embracing that roller coaster. So we can dive in on that note. Hey, you're welcome, Lise. So whenever you're ready, we can take some time to close the eyes, and whether we're seated or lying down, I welcome both, as long as you can stay awake. I mean, even if you fall asleep, it's not a huge deal, but it's up to you. So we can close the eyes and just bring the attention inwards. And of course, just closing the eyes doesn't always mean we're going to be more or less aware of anything. Oftentimes we're already aware of what's happening in our body, emotions, sensations, thoughts. It's just that when the eyes are closed, it kind of creates um, you know, an inward focus, so that we can really zone in on what is arising, what is present in the body right now. These initial few moments, we can just take that time to simply be with what is here. Sensations in the body, feelings, emotions, thoughts. And in being with what is present, there is a certain ease that emerges progressively as we deepen into the sensations, the feelings, the thoughts. something that may have felt more dense or more rigid, more strong, may start to dissolve a little bit. It may start to open up. And of course, this may take some time. So we're just going to continue to come back to this place of simply being, just being with ourselves, with what is present. And if there's any uncomfortable feelings or thoughts, sensations, we're going to see where and how the arising intention of needing that to change or wanting that to be fixed or released or dissolved, seeing if we can also release and see through that intention, just dissolving various expectations or wants and desires here. And oftentimes we can see that as we rest into any of the uncomfortable feelings or sensations, emotions, thoughts, as we sink into them and we're not expecting them to be anything other than what they are, this is often where a certain amount of wisdom may emerge with this particular topic or feeling, sensation. May not always be intellectual, but there may be some intellectual understandings that arise, and also just a certain deepened knowing that everything is okay, even as there is discomfort, if there is any. So, similar to a child who is deeply distraught or afraid, even though that distraught or that fear may be irrational, maybe there isn't really a true threat or something in particular to be afraid of, there's still a willingness to hold the child, be compassionate with the child, be understanding of the child and all the ways in which it manifests this fear and these emotions. So, similar to this reference, this is essentially how we are deepening into ourselves here. So, the aspects of self in which are in that state of discomfort or distraught or fear, even in the most subtle of ways, we can deepen into just simply holding that and resting with that, being with that, and not needing for it to change, just compassionately holding space, observing, loving, accepting. And we're seeing what happens as we dissolve into this silent acceptance of ourselves exactly as we are and exactly as we're feeling, as we're thinking, as we're being. This essentially consumes all of the natural tendencies to move towards some past or future experience or perception. We may find that at a certain point, whatever has been focused on, whatever energies or excess energy or discordant energy that is present in the body may have already begun to move. It may have begun to release through the top of the head. It may have dissolved. Sometimes it may have even intensified. At times, as we deepen into certain areas of the body, the feelings may intensify because it's like we're sinking deeper into the onion layers that are present there, sinking deeper into that compassion, that self acceptance, where we're not needing anything to change. We're giving ourselves that undivided attention and presence. And for those who have this energy that is starting to circulate or move through the body, you may start to be able to perceive a kind of like a fountain coming out through the top of the head where excess energy can exit. It also may disperse through the feet or just throughout the rest of the body and start to cycle, or any particular energy that may have been stuck in a certain region of the body may have begun to move or simply dissipate. And so through this initial layer, as we're observing what is holding our attention in our field of view, the specific aspects of the body mind that are charged that really pull at your attention. But at a certain point, we may start to notice that nothing in particular is greater or lesser than anything else. Whatever may have seemed to be so important, so painful, or so pleasurable, or whatever is holding any particular charge in your field of view, as those charges start to lessen, we start to see that the entire field of what you can perceive, this entire field of energy and consciousness, is all a part of this same one field. So, like the ocean, the same water makes up the entire ocean, but yet on the surface, there are all of these waves that arise and fall. And in the same way, these emotions, these thoughts, these sensations are just naturally arising and appearing, but naturally also falling back into the same ocean. And so, from this perception, we can begin to connect and see ourselves as this interconnected web of energy. And so, we're not so concerned necessarily with the contents of what is arising, because whatever is arising is made up of the same source within the same field. And as we continue to focus upon what is underneath the surface, this unified field of your essence, we naturally pull our attention away from the contents of what is arising and begin to perceive ourselves as this source, as this original source. And naturally, as this occurs, what have been, what may have been arising in the form of these thoughts, feelings, sensations, these various energy charges, they may continue to just dissolve in your field of view. And so we naturally will be pulled into this silence where we can simply continue to see what is pulled, what is pulling our field, what is pulling our attention, specific thoughts or feelings, sensations, circumstances. These may pull at our attention and be very charged. But as we continue to remind ourselves of returning to this complete unified field, this ocean, we continue to remember this metaphor, then we can continue to sink into the silence. Just like the noise is very apparent on the surface of the ocean with the waves and the wind and all of the movements, but yet underneath the surface, it is quite silent. And so as we return to this silent field, we continue to dissolve all of these illusionary appearances that seem so real and so separate from one another. This separation causing endless jumping from one thought to the next, from one emotion to the next, one sensation to the next, endlessly seeking to find this essential source, but yet it is in none of these places. And so as this inward silence is connected to, there may be subtle levels and arisings of feelings of joyfulness or a contentment, a certain peace, a love for oneself, and acceptance. This may be very subtle at first, but also may continue to open up and expand. And as these subtle arisings, these feelings emerge, there's nothing to do with them other than continue to bask within them, to continue to focus upon them. And as that occurs, it naturally grows and builds through the body. And we will bask within the silence for a few moments here, just continuing to see that whatever does observe in the field of view is not so relevant, not so important. Although it can be acknowledged, we're continuing to just simply return to this silent, non-judgmental, non-expecting, non-desiring perception. And to ground into the body in a deepened way, we may look to connect with the breath in a very slow fashion, where we're breathing in through the nose, expanding throughout every cell in the body, and then breathing out through the nose. This may be coupled with just expanding our attention, our love, our compassion into the space that we're in, into the surroundings of our body, recognizing that movement of this love, this compassion, this energy has a electromagnetic field that extends around the body and influences the physical environments, interactions, people, situations that we come across. And so by very slowly breathing or just moving the intention in and out through the body, we're kind of expanding that field and connecting with this energy in a practical way as we prepare to go through the rest of our day. Sometimes it just takes one breath, other times it may take a few, where we feel more of this radiance that builds around the body and through the body. And at a certain point, we may feel complete with that and just simply rest in ourselves and our body. Some of us may feel called to continue, which is always welcome. This whole process can be continually repeated as we observe sensation, feelings, energies that we'd like to bring our attention to and simply be with, become intimate with, and potentially heal or transmute. But for those that feel ready, we can open the eyes and bring the attention back here. I'll make a note on the one element of the meditation, which we haven't really done much before. I'm sure you've maybe done a practice like this before or have done it with some of the other teachers, which is similar to kind of a inner child like healing process, which was a bit of what we explored in the beginning. This kind of metaphor of our ability to bring that unconditional acceptance, that just silent witnessing of ourselves, similar to as if we would do that with a child who's maybe afraid of the boogeyman under the bed, or just crying and sad about something that they may be afraid of that may not necessarily seem rational on the surface, especially to maybe the adult mind. But of course, because that is what's present and that is what's happening, there's not much we can do to convince the child that they shouldn't be crying, or they shouldn't be feeling, or they shouldn't be afraid, because this is often what causes more suppression in the child and in the energy that's being held. And this is often what many of us have experienced through our life. And so the premise of inner child healing is our ability to move into the unresolved aspects of our energy body and our emotional body that require this unconditional, loving perception, this silent witnessing, where we're not giving ourselves advice, we're not trying to figure out why, we're not trying to figure out how, we're not trying to manipulate our experience or our emotions, which is, of course, what the masculine mind will often do. We are emerging into it. We are resting with it. We are being with this energy, this emotion for as long as we need to. There's no time, there's no even a goal per se, because we're dissolving the intentions of needing to manipulate and change and fix and make our emotions better, which is often what we may do through food or addictions or relationships, many ways of suppressing emotion. So I've actually developed a specific process. We basically did it there, but I've been teaching one-on-one and in groups a very specific energy healing or emotional healing process, which is, in my opinion, one of the most effective processes to explore this. Because in my journey, I explored so many different forms of inner child healing and Reiki and emotional healing and energy healing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they really all just come back to the same core principles and very much of what we've just done here, which is to be able to give ourselves that silent attention where we're not trying to manipulate our experience. And in that, and as we feel into those emotions or what's arising, this is often where most of the insights come, the spontaneous healings, the insights into our experience, the taking of responsibility for how we've potentially co-created an experience or a relationship. This is all what tends to emerge. So, this is what we've just done here, at least on a small degree. If you do want to explore that method in a deeper way or learn it, I'll just leave my email here. I know most of you are connected with me, but just in case, you can send me a message and I can, we can talk about that. But other than that, if there's any questions or comments about that exploration, feel free. The ocean metaphor, inner child. Yeah, I mean, the ocean piece is quite nice, right? It's recognizing it. As soon as we go under the water, it's completely silent, right? For the most part. Um, that it's completely silent because we're connecting to the source of where all the waves come from, all the movements of the water on the surface. So when we understand this in our individual experience, we can start to surrender our thoughts, feelings, sensations, all the movements of our day-to-day experience. We can start to see the interconnectivity of all of them. they all come from the same place. They all rise and fall back into the same place. So they're really not so much different. You know, what seems to be fearful, what seems to be loving, all this. Of course, in our relative experience, it's very valid to see the difference in these. But paradoxically, it's when we dissolve the perceived differences in this and that, left or right, you know, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, pleasure, pain. When we start to dissolve those differences, those dualities, this is where things become much more consistent and fulfilling. Am I teaching any other classes? Right now, I do not have a workshop plan. Most of my work is one-on-one. I find I get the most, you know, progress with people in that way, in different ways: emotional healing, detox, you know, spiritual guidance, and human design and soul path readings. These are the main verticals we're going down. But I will teach some more classes and workshops coming soon. The previous ones and the recordings are my YouTube, and then, you know, additional contents on my Patreon for my Patreon group people. But just add me on social media and things, or send me an email, and you'll be connected to those things. But other than that, I won't keep anyone any longer. You can be on your way unless there's any questions or comments. But um, that is all for now. Deep love to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful